Welcome back, ninjas! Today here at Psychology Ninjas we're looking at Bandura 1961. This is all about aggression being learnt through imitation of others. So this is a study. Therefore, to get our AO1 marks, we're focusing on the aim, procedure, findings and conclusions. It's really important here that you have specifics and that aspects of the procedure can lead you into evaluation. It's also important that you have unique details. When we're thinking about the aims, we obviously want to talk about this being acquired through observation, but also testing whether children would imitate a same-sex role model. You can include that final aim, but 2 is enough for you to access marks. In terms of the procedure, be really clear about this being a match pairs design, that the children were matched by a teacher based on prior levels of aggression and then randomly allocated to one of the 2 conditions. It's also really important that you have the different parts of this procedure in terms of the different rooms that the children were introduced to. Here you want to make sure that you've got clear findings, and you can include some numerical findings as well. Conclusions, again, linking those back to those aims. Depending on the aims that you have selected, think about those conclusions accordingly. So when we're evaluating, this is a study. Therefore, we're using grave in order to evaluate. We want to be clear here about the impact of this on the specific aim for Bandura 1961, and so we don't drift into any other of the Bandura studies. It's really important here that we use arguments and counter-arguments in order to develop those logical chains of reasoning. So you can see this here where we're talking about generalisability, and therefore we have a mini conclusion about the fact that these findings might not be generalisable to the acquisition of all aggression. When putting these together in our evaluate question, we need to make sure that we're balanced between our assessment objectives, our explanation and evaluation. Therefore, we want to start by talking about the aims and also give details about the participants, 36 boys and 36 girls. Then we can move into our evaluation of this as a sample. We're then wanting to talk about aspects of the procedure, and then we can talk about this being a standardised procedure, but we want to have really specific details about how it was standardised. I.e. that all the participants were frustrated in the same way, they were shown into a room and then told those toys were not for them, they were for some other children, but also that the children had the same toys available after they had been frustrated. We can talk about a less standardised aspect of the procedure is that there was subjective ratings of the teacher in terms of aggression, and these might change depending on how well or little they knew the children. We can then have a conclusion about internal reliability, and overall we'd suggest that this study was high in internal reliability. You then want to talk about as one of the findings, and we can move through and talk about the application to the real world. That this has applications in terms of the consequences of people who are witnessing domestic violence and therefore are more likely to be violent themselves. We can also talk about a positive of this is that we can use these findings from Bandura through shaping, and that we can expose children, or those children who have been exposed can mitigate those exposures through additional classes. The fact that we can apply these findings to the real world gives the findings of this study credibility. We'd move through then and talk about a conclusion, and this is linking to internal validity, that it is accurate inside the study, that it does measure what it intended to measure. The fact that we have a match pairs design increases that validity, that we know it's only the model, not how aggressive the children were beforehand. Also, the inclusion of non-aggressive controls meant that spontaneous aggression was accounted for. We're going to counter that with a discussion about low ecological validity, that this was a really artificial environment and that playing with the Bobo doll itself is atypical, particularly as the rebounds encouraging more aggression. Therefore, we've got problems in terms of the accuracy applying these findings and conclusions outside in the real world. We'd then move through, we'd give one more finding, and then we talk about ethics, that there is an ethical problem in terms of deliberately frustrating the children, and that although parental consent was given, it was difficult to withdraw the children once they started the study. We can counter that by the fact that there was mild and short-lived distress, and that the frustration experience being told that they couldn't play with some toys is proportional to everyday experiences. There was sufficient mitigation to say that this study overall was ethical. Let's break down some exam questions now about Bandura's study. Here we've got an explain question. This is asking us to give a bit more detail about conclusions of this study. Now, they have to be specific to 1961 and not general things that we could say about imitation. Here's another exam question. Here we have an assess question. This is asking us to explain and evaluate and come to judgments throughout. You might want to start off your response by giving a judgment in terms of the reliability and validity of Bandura et al. Study. Don't forget here that we're focusing on reliability and validity rather than other things that we've already explained. Thanks for tuning in to Psychology Ninjas today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. See you next time.